So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are right now. We have a lot of participants for this session joining us from Asia, so on the later part of the day. My name is David Fiedler. I work as Manager for Social Impact at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. For those who don't know, the World Business Council, the WBCSD, we are an organization, a CEO-driven organization with about 200 members who are all companies, businesses from around the world, most of them on the larger side of the spectrum, from really all around the world, many from Europe, from America, but also many members from the Asian continent. We have, I think, the only continent that is underrepresented, unfortunately, still we're working on that, is Africa, where we have only a handful of members, but as I said, really global membership, and also very diverse in terms of industries that these members represent. And the WBCSD is here to bring companies together around a sustainability discussion and a vision of how business can contribute to a more sustainable world. And within that vision, we have a team that works as where I work in social impact. And one of the topics that we have been exploring the last 2 years with about 20 companies is the future of work. And it's a space where we try to help companies understand the space, understand the topic, because it is a very broad topic and a very complex issue as well. But then also come up with solutions or highlight or showcase solutions that companies are already using and adopting to improve work and improve the future of work. And within that, again, we have set up recently a smaller working group on skills. And as part of that, we're partnering with UNICEF and PwC, who is a member of WBCSD and of the Future of Work project, and has partnered with UNICEF, was partnering with UNICEF on some of these skills issues as well. So we saw the overlap and the synergies, and we decided to cooperate. And this webinar is just the first step, let's say, the first public step to bring this discussion to the fore, bring this discussion to the public. So today we're going to talk about skilling up, the role of business in addressing the skills mismatch. And we're repeating this session later in the day to really allow for a global discussion and really a good regional representation of participants throughout the day. Good numbers today. We have 65 people in the room. So thank you all for coming again. I already welcomed you, set the scene. We have a few speakers today. Juliet Studdard, Director for People and Organization at the PwC UK, helping us with the skills workstream in WBCSD. Ivan Kursak, Education Specialist at the UNICEF Regional Office in South Asia. Izzy Feingold, Chief of Education for UNICEF in the Philippines. And then Clems Ramos, Program Manager for iPeople. We will hear more about that linked to one of our member companies in WBCSD, the Ayala Corporation, based out of the Philippines. And Ricardo Trujillo, Senior Manager for Foretica. Foretica is basically our sister organization in Spain. So reflecting a lot of the work that we do and the vision that we have of working with companies to contribute to sustainability, but with a focus and a foot in Spain. Thank you to all the speakers. With that, I would go quick into the agenda. Welcome and setting the scene happening right now. We would then hear first from UNICEF we would hear the youth perspective on the skills mismatch, the impact it has, the meaning it has, and some key insights on the topic from Asia. We would then look at the business perspective presented by Juliet from PwC, and then hear from a bit the business experiences from Clems and Foretica, from Ricardo, sorry, to just also hear how they are addressing the skills gap, what it does mean for them. We'll open up for Q&A. In the meantime, during the presentation, if you have any questions regarding either the technology that we're using or the content, hopefully more questions about the content today, then please use the chat function and we will bring those questions in related to the speakers as we go. You will also have, as participants, the opportunity to share your perspective, and we will show you right now how that would work. You may have heard a voice before saying the session is being recorded and you have been asked to continue the session. So we're recording the sessions and we'll make it available after the sessions. You are all muted right now, so that we avoid having any echoes, any sounds coming from where you are in your offices or your homes. The slides and the recording will be made available. And I already said, use the chat function if you have any questions or comments at any time of the webinar. Here, a quick antitrust statement reminder especially for the companies in the room. Please avoid any discussion or any conversation of competitively sensitive nature, anything that relates to pricing costs, bid strategies, future capacity additions, customers, output decisions, any of these topics will be blocked by us, as that is to ensure that we do comply with antitrust regulations. So let's start right away. We would like to hear your views. You can now either on your browser or on your phone go to menti.com. Use the code 3102755 when you get asked to do so, or you can scan the QR code to access the menti.com. And share with us really briefly, in your opinion, what are the main causes of the global skills mismatch? You'll also find the code again in the chat, so that if you do forget the code on the way there, can still use it. And I will just put the the survey on the screen as well, and we will start seeing the responses coming in. So please go to menti.com, use the code 3102755, and we will see your responses. Sorry. So we see here already a few responses coming in, and especially the speakers. If you see anything that relates to your presentation, to your input today, feel free to refer back to this. So we see low alignment between academia and industry, definitely a topic that we hope to discuss today. Rapid changes in technology. I saw a lack of coordination between private sector and government, private sector and education as well. Not enough data. Curriculums are not adapted to the reality of the job market. Lack of access to quality education, very important topic as well. Gap in after education skills training. The world and working life changing so rapidly that education cannot keep up. So we see here participants sharing actually some of the topics that we luckily prepared for today. Slow innovation I see coming in, reinforcing loops on inequalities, very, very interesting input there. So you can keep those responses coming. We have 2 more rounds later with different questions, but if anything pops up for you, the Mentimeter keeps on receiving responses. We have a few, actually I see we have 70 participants and 30 have responded, so good numbers here as well. Okay, so with that, I would like to thank you all for your insights, for your inputs, definitely very good points that we hope to discuss today. And if you think we're not discussing some of these topics enough, please, again, use the chat function, point that out to us, and we will try to respond to your wishes. With that, let me quickly go back to our slides. and hand over now to Ivan from UNICEF. Let me give you the control of the screen, and you should now be able to go ahead, Ivan. The screen is yours.
Okay, I'm trying.
Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ivan Korsak. I'm an education specialist and economist working for UNICEF in the regional office for South Asia in Kathmandu, where I am located and speaking to you from today. It's a pleasure to be here today and participate in this event. I will try today to give you a regional overview for South Asia on education trends, demography, employment and skills, and perhaps not within this session, but perhaps later I can also give you the example from one country office from Bangladesh. So moving on. Sorry, but
double click on the screen, I think would work. Yeah, there you
go. Okay, so first of all, before COVID, South Asia was already experiencing a severe learning crisis. And what you're seeing here are projections. If learning outcomes continue on the same trends as we are experiencing today in South Asia, then by 2030, only about a third, or 34%, of the children will be able to achieve minimum secondary level skills. That's important because that's the minimum skill level that are required to be able to learn more and stack knowledge on top of it. In terms of secondary education completion, what you're looking at here is a graph that presents the percentage of youth aged 20 to 24 who complete secondary education. The red arrow here points to the level reached by South Asia, and you can see that it's only about 50% who actually finish secondary education in South Asia. In terms of tertiary education, this time it's for the age group 25 to 29, and you see the same graph with all of the different regions, and South Asia here with the red arrow pointing to only about 10%. So 10% of young adults have tertiary education in South Asia today, which is basically the same level as advanced economies 50 years ago. In terms of population growth and demography, what you're looking at here is a graph that shows a horizontal bar at 100% for 2015, so that you can see the percentage increase for all countries in 2030, which is represented by those orange dots, and 2050 by those blue dots. So you can see different profiles of demographic trends. Afghanistan and Pakistan and South Asia are still growing pretty fast. Maldives, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan are growing, but relatively slower. And Sri Lanka's population will actually decrease after 2030. So different demographic trends here. Now, the reason why I'm going on about demography is to get to the demographic dividend. Now, what is that, first of all? Well, it's an accelerated economic growth period, which in a country can result from a change in the population age structure and, through different aspects. But basically, it happens when, on the scale of the country, families tend to have fewer children. Now, what does the demographic dividend actually do? Well, during that time, the labor force grows more rapidly than the population that depends on it, the children and the elderly who have already retired. Because of that, that releases resources for investment in economic development and family welfare, and usually it's a period that results in faster per capita income growth. But it's not a permanent situation, and it's not automatic either. So I'm going to try and give you an overview of what's happening with regards to the demographic dividend in South Asia. This graph shows you the timeline. The horizontal axis shows you the timeline in terms of the time, the vertical are all of the countries. What you see here in dark green is the time for the early dividend period, and that's the time when the workforce grows faster than the dependents. And then the late dividend is when that window of opportunity actually starts closing. And you can see it closes when it reaches the red bars, indicating post-dividend period. So what is happening here is that for Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Maldives, Bangladesh, Nepal, you can see the window of opportunity when you have a working force that is growing faster than the dependents. That's closing around 2045 or so. In India, it will take a little longer and it will close around 2055 or so. Pakistan and Pakistan and Afghanistan have more time. Sorry, going back. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because this is now between 2020 and 2045 or so. So we have about 20 to 25 years. That's the window of opportunity to make changes. That's the window of opportunity to make sure that the youth are skilled with the skills that they actually need to be able to meaningfully participate in the job market of the future. Now, how do you reap the dividend? What happens when you reap the dividend of the demographic dividend? Well, it can only happen if the new working force can be integrated into the market. And then only can you have an increase in savings and investments benefiting human capital accumulation at household or government levels. And to reap the full benefits, of course, you need strategic government investments and policies in favor of making sure that the youth are ready to enter the market. Now, in South Asia, unfortunately, you have very, very low TVET participation, technical vocational education training. In South Asia here, this is the red curve right at the bottom, only 1% or so of students of the appropriate age join TVET. This is extremely low, probably the lowest in the world. And to give you an element of comparison, countries like Singapore or perhaps New Zealand, who create a lot of jobs through TVET, they have more than 50% of participation in TVET compared to our 1% in South Asia. So a big missed opportunity here. Next, the skills for work mismatched. It can be seen in different ways. On the left-hand side, you have the results of a survey that was conducted by Manpower Group in 2015, and it asked employers in Asia and the Pacific whether they could fill vacancies with adequately skilled manpower. And actually, the percentage of employers who report difficulties in filling those vacancies with adequately skilled manpower, now it's nearly 50% in South Asia, as you can see on the graph on the left. On the right-hand side, you have another graph, which to me shows also the skills for work mismatch. What the graph shows is two things: the growth in production, as well as the growth, the real growth in wages. Now, those two things are supposed to go one with the other, as is the case in green, for example, and that's in East Asia. But in South Asia, the situation here in red is different. And you can see that the dotted line, which represents production growth, actually gets away from the other curve, which shows wage growth. And this difference between the two, if you take wage as a measure of economic value of human capital, that difference is evidence that there is a skills for work mismatch, so that labor is not rewarded at the same rate as the growth of production. Now, on top of that, you have a worrying trend, which is that youth participation in the formal sector is actually decreasing in Asia everywhere. Now, I'm not going to go through the statistics, but it's particularly acute in South Asia. And the reasons for this decline is that you have a formal sector job market that is unable to absorb the youth bulge. Basically, there are more youth entering the job market than the job market can actually absorb. And that leads to greater participation in the informal market from even educated youth. And also because there is greater youth participation in further training in education. Now, last year, 2019, we conducted a survey called the Voices of Youth. We surveyed about 33,000 youth from the age of 15 to 24 in all of South Asian countries. And we asked those young people about their perceptions of their own skills, their ability to transition to work, and the barriers that they face. And this is basically a summary of what they came up with. So they are aware that TVET would be a good idea, but in its current form, they are not really interested. The skills that they feel they miss the most are ICT skills, interpersonal and communication skills, as well as resource management skills. In terms of transition to work, they experience difficulties because of financial pressures to support their families, which create incentives to work early and stop their education. The second aspect they come up with is that the education system does not prepare them sufficiently for work and employment, and also they lack career counseling. In terms of barriers, they cite hiring practices in South Asia as a big hurdle, as well as the need for a network and contacts to get your first job. And there is a lack of jobs overall in the formal sector, which they also note. And finally, they did point at the gender norms in South Asia.
Self-control, to collaborate with others, to adapt, to be resilient. Very important skills that we all have been challenged during this, for example, during these pandemic times. So I'm going again faster in this one, but there is vast evidence on why social emotional skills are important. So the evidence is indisputable. These skills, developing these skills are linked to increasing academic achievement, to improve behaviors, for example, decreasing dropout, decreasing drug use in pregnancy, mental health problems, and also it's a very smart decision to make for governments and for business. It has been calculated that the social return of investing in social emotional learning is from 1 to 11. So for every $1 that we invest in social emotional learning, the return from the society is on $11. This is, this evidence have been, I can come back to any of these parts later, but what I want to mention is that the evidence is very strong on the importance and why this is good for our children, for our adolescents, and for our society. And also they have long-term impact. This is an example of one type of social emotional skill or 21st century skill that is called growth mindset. Our capacity or ability to think that we can improve, that our intelligence, for example, is not fixed as it was used to think in the past, but is flexible. So for me, this is the most relevant finding from the last PISA test, this international test that includes more than 70 countries. And they found a strong correlation between the growth mindset and the PISA scores. So for example, in this graph, we can see that the countries here on the right side, for example, Estonia or Denmark, are countries when we measure on the horizontal axis that have a higher proportion of students in their country that think that their intelligence can grow, that they have this growth mindset. And these countries also have what we measure in the vertical axis, which is the test score in PISA, in this case on reading, the reading score. On the other side, on the left, we have countries, for example, Panama, Indonesia, or Kosovo, where their students don't think that their intelligence can grow. So they think that their intelligence is fixed. So, and of course, as I said, there is a strong correlation. So these countries also had very low scores in reading. So this is a very interesting finding because the more we think that our intelligence can grow and in general our skills can get better, we have better outcomes in cognitive skills, but also in other type of outcomes. So this is one example on how these 21st century skills, and in particular social emotional skills, are very relevant for other outcomes as well. So what other evidence we found for the Philippines? So in the graph before, we saw that the Philippines was very low in the PISA scores, but also because the growth mindset is very low. So only 31% of the Filipino students think that their intelligence can grow. The average for OECD countries is 63%, for example. Also, bullying is a big issue according to the PISA test. 65% of the students in the Philippines reported having been bullied at least a few times a month. So when we think of the school outcome, we have to think also on the social emotional outcomes and what is happening within the classrooms. Another interesting finding for the Philippines is a study that UNICEF conducted following a cohort of children from kindergarten until grade 4. This is an ongoing study. We started following these kids from the year 2017. And one of the main findings from these results so far is that there is a strong correlation between the social emotional skills that are measured in this study and the cognitive performance of the children. So we now have data for the country, very strong data coming from more than 3,000 children that have been included in this longitudinal study. So, and these type of studies are helping inform the Department of Education to improve the policies that they have. In terms of skills match itself, and I'm going to relate this to what I was explaining in the previous slide. So we see, for example, that in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia, Indonesia and the Philippines are the countries with the highest percentage of youth population that are not in the formal learning, not in employment, and not having training at the moment. So this is population at high risk of getting involved in risk behaviors. So this is over 20% for these two countries. And we also have recent evidence, on study from this year, from 2020, on what are the competencies of the Filipino labor force. The more than 50,000 of Filipinos were tested on different abilities. And what we found in this study is that the 21st century skills and some of them social emotional skills are the ones where the labor force in the Philippines are rated the lowest. For example, problem solving, planning and organizing, innovation, decision making, or self-motivation. These are critical areas that help explain and understand this skills mismatch, at least in the Philippines. And three main causes that have been identified for this job skills mismatch are: one, the weak labor market information system, and this is related to what the participants have been mentioning in the live polls, like the coordination and the information between government and the private sector. Also, that job seekers' career preference is no longer in demand, so there is a mismatch there. And the third point is the inadequate preparation in terms of education, training, and guidance. And this is one of the areas where UNICEF is working through a different project. So let me share in the last two slides a few things that we are doing related to the developing of 21st century skills. So first, we are supporting the Department of Education in identifying how these skills are integrated in basic education, in the curriculum, in the teacher training, and in the national assessment. Because we come from an education model that didn't prioritize the 21st century skills. And we need to transitate and to transform the education system to focus on these also skills that are very relevant for this century. As part of this work, this is informing the Department of Education to improve these areas of training, assessment, and curriculum, and to expand to other skills. We focus for this work on three 21st century skills: on collaboration and critical thinking and problem solving. But now the ministry, the Department of Education, is expanding this analysis to other skills and to more subjects that are part of the national curriculum. I already mentioned the longitudinal study that we are continue measuring the social emotional skills and the cognitive skills to keep informing how the Department of Education can better target the developing of social-emotional skills. And I'm going to finalize with a project that we have with ING that we call Power for Youth. So this is the last slide. I'm sorry for running, but I know that we have limited time today. But I'm happy to respond and to go deeper in the question, in the Q&A part. So what are we working with ING? So this is a project in different countries. UNICEF is one of the six countries, and we have two components. The learning component is focused on the non-formal education, on the alternative learning system for those who at some point drop out school and they are trying to have a second chance. So we are working on developing the life skills or the 21st century skills, but first training the teachers in being able to develop these skills. I mean, they were not able at the beginning of doing that because they didn't have the training, the initial training for a focus on 21st century skills, and also on blended learning, combining the use of technologies and also face-to-face learning, especially in this context of COVID-19. We contextualize learning modules, focus on life skills, and we are working in the recognition of private sector providers of non-formal education, and also replacing the current evaluation system. So currently the ALS system have one exam at the very end of the alternative learning system in which they pass or not this exam, and if they don't, which is the case for the majority of the ALS learners, the alternative learning system learners, they don't get the certification. So we are switching to a new system in which they can get credits by module and get certification by different type of skills. And this is going to change the way the students are assessed, and they will have more opportunities for then getting jobs and also continue with further education. So these different types of initiative, some of them have been tested in the local level, in particular in Zamboanga Peninsula, but now they are expanding to other parts of the country. That's the way we are working with the Department of Education. So we work together, try innovative approaches, new type of interventions, and then based on the learnings and the evaluations that we conduct, we expand these to other parts of the Philippines and even nationwide, which is the case now. So part of these resources are now in a website that is ICT for ALS that have been launched for this new context of COVID-19. So that's the learning component. And finally, the civic engagement component of the ING project is on empowering youth to identify the problems in their community and to develop projects that will help their communities. The idea is that they become agents of change since they are very young, and they can be leaders in their community and find solutions in which they develop different type of skills, most of them 21st century skills, to improve the quality of life in their community. We are promoting youth participation through innovative social media and also through the traditional channels, but social media have a great reach in the Philippines. And also we have a project that is focused more nationwide, supporting youth representatives in local governments who have been elected, and they need more skills to support the youth in their communities and the youth agenda in their communities. And we are training a national government agency, the National Youth Commission, on developing participation skills and adolescent development in the country. So we have created a master's program in coordination with a national university, with Ateneo University. So now the staff of this National Youth Commission is getting this training, so they will be more supportive of the youth agenda in the country. So I'm gonna stop now, but happy to go back later for Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Izzy. So to the participants in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function, and you can actually use the chat function as well to just direct your questions to Ivan or to Izzy directly if you have any questions on what they presented so far. I would like to go to the next question while Juliet gets ready for her input. What consequences does the skills mismatch have for your company? Again, go to menti.com, same code as before, or use the QR code. We'll give it 1 minute just to really get some quick inputs here. Allow me to change it for you. Here we go. So now please start giving us your responses. So what consequences does the skills mismatch have for your company? Of course, this is a question that is more relevant for people who are in companies or in business, but if you're not, please feel free to also share what you think may be consequences of the skills mismatch for companies, from what we've heard also from Easy and from Ivan. Okay, I don't see anyone responding to this one. So you can just write what you think. There are not options to choose from. Oh, there seems to be no space for the answer. So there must be a problem with the technology. Okay, then we'll skip that. I'll try to fix it for the next one. Probably some setting that we got wrong. But we will actually hear then instead straight now from Juliet. Juliet, you're here with us, right? Still?
All good to go. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So good morning, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to talk to you today and work in partnership with WBCSD and with UNICEF on this very important topic. So I'm going to give you a slightly different angle on this, which is the kind of the business perspective. I work in consulting. I have done for 24 years, and I work across the public and private sector on large-scale workforce transformation. So I spend my time with clients, helping them think about this issue and try and plan what to do about it. So I just wanted to take you through some more data. You're going to see me some more data, but from a slightly different perspective, but very much very similar themes to the ones that you've seen before. Particularly, I read some World Economic Forum data the other day, just reinforcing Easy's point about that the people that are educating our youth of today are also 100 years behind because they were born in the 20th century. So that as a way of thinking, gosh, you're having people educating people that are far behind themselves. So potentially a big issue there. So I just wanted to, have I got control, Davida?
Yes.
Oh.
Here you go.
Yeah, oh, brilliant. Thank you. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so I'm just going to I'm going to try and shorten this because I want some discussion at the end. So I'm going to give you a context for what we mean by upskilling. Why is it important to our clients, what our clients are telling us, and the skills gap. So many of the important trends, just delving a little bit deeper on what kind of skills that the business is seeing that they're lacking, and the impact on jobs and our role in that. So what can we do about this as organisations and as governments to try and help this over and above what education are doing? So those are the topics I'm going to cover. So we think that upskilling isn't just about digital skills, and as Izzy and Ivan have just gone over, it's about human skills. It's identifying the knowledge and skills and experience that are going to be most valuable to us as a globe in the future, and it's about identifying those people that can excel in the future. So it is really important to all of us to get to this. Is not a competition. This is actually going to affect our future. So we've all got a role to play in working together to solve this for our future of our society. Just in terms of technology change, we've talked about demographic change, but technology is going to really is altering our organisations. And this on its own is a statistic. Between 5 and 10% of roles per year are being affected and taken away by technology. Now that has a huge impact on what we skill our people to do, because it's about actually not seeing what the jobs of the future are. So how how a lot of my clients are saying, well, how can I prepare the people that I've got today in my organisation and the talent, the potential of talent, when I can't see the roles of the future? So a lot of it is about what are our big bets? What do we invest in to actually make people able to be real skilled for the jobs that you can't see and for the jobs of the future that don't exist right now? And that's the challenge. That's the key challenge. All the jobs you can see, the near-term skills you can see, but it's the jobs of the future that we're struggling with. So again, slides quite busy. We'll send these out at the end, but just a couple of data points and some really great investment in technology. So one of the stats is £3 trillion is being invested in technology in our organisations. But actually, what our organisations are finding is they're not seeing a productivity increase. So, piling money into all this new technology, but actually without learning and skills development, they're not seeing an increase in productivity. So they're being caught between a rock and a hard place. But CEOs are saying that actually their priority is about upskilling their workers, but still only 43%. The other positive is that 77% of people are ready to learn. And that's up from our global survey. I'm actually going to do a cut of it for Asia for you. But really, people want to learn. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel, not just for the youth that are coming into our labour market, but for those people that are still in employment now. They want to learn new skills, but they're also not getting the opportunity. So only 33% of people have said they're actually getting the opportunity to learn about new skills. So on the other side of the page, you've got what some of the challenges, and we've seen again. We've talked about some of those here today. We've talked about productivity, the innovation thing. This thing that we've talked about creating people that can innovate. And if you ask our CEO survey, which I'll go into in a minute, that's the thing that CEOs are most afraid of, is that their organizations will die because they have an inability to innovate. If you look at all the organizations that have simply gone away through technology, HP, Blockbuster, you name it, they've gone away just overnight because of technology change. Their fear is they're going to be one of those organizations, and their inability to innovate is one of the crucial things. And going back to Ivan and Issy, is what are the skills then about innovation? Just a little bit more on what keeping CEOs awake at night. I think over and above the innovation is the cost. So they're seeing costs rise, their investment in technology is not keeping up, so they're feeling the pressure. The added pressure is to then take people off of this usual activity to retrain them. That's a huge issue for them. So a lot of my clients are saying, how can I marry up business as usual delivery? And I work a lot with the public sector that can't stop. So all our armed forces, all our government services, how can we stop and let people have enough room to learn when we're up against it in terms of cost and productivity? So those are key messages coming out of the survey for us on that. So in terms of jobs, we're talking about we think there's a new balance. So automation won't actually affect every job, but it will have an impact on the job. There's some jobs that won't be taken away. So I think there's those in the healthcare sector, that humanness. You can't take away the humanness of jobs. So that's becoming even more critical. If you think about call centres, that's actually taking away things like transactions done by a bot or a robot. But actually what's left is actually that ability to have human contact, human engagement, and human nous about what the customer wants. So again, we've talked about innovation is the prize. That is creating talent. So our role in society is actually to create talent of the future. It's not about jobs. This is about creating talent that can innovate and be adaptable in the future. So we've talked a lot about it's not just digital skills. So some of the skills that we see organisations really struggling to find is empathy, resilience, the ability to change and change and change again, critical thinking, that emotional intelligence, the humanness, flexibility and creativity. So those are just some of those skill sets. But I think, and some of them I appreciate, all the definitions associated with these are very different by companies. So how can we be clear? When somebody says empathy, do we all get what that means? And I think that's one of the problems that I'll come to next about what's our new demand signal out to the market and to education. So in terms of what organisations can do, again, working with organisations that are beginning to share the impact of new technology in their workforce. And it's really important to share that, and to share that early, to get people used to the fact that jobs and skills are changing. And not just for the people in employment, but as Ivan and Izzy have said, for the people in education. Being clear about the support that as an organisation you'll provide, and the commercial pressures, being really honest about what those pressures are, so that people make choices about where they develop their skills, and if they have to develop a new skill set. And being clear about the future of work. If people are hiding it, they're not being honest with themselves, and people will walk away. The last slide about our role, which I think we'll go on to next in terms of what we can do about it. And it isn't about us protecting jobs, it's about us developing our new leaders. So I think, well, personally, I think we've got a couple of things that we can do. Creating a new demand signal for the labour market, to say this is what skills we need, and for education, to invest in skills, not just for the ones coming out now, but right from early ages. How do we get those people that are going to be our data scientists of the future? It happens right at, from the age of 5 upwards. And a call to action. So how can we work collaboratively together to solve this one? Because no one organisation is going to have an effect. So how can we work together as organisations and together with our governments to make this happen, and to upskill the people who are working in the future? So that's what I'll leave you with. I'll hand you back to Davida, and I hope to have gone a little bit quicker than I thought I would, just to save some time.
Thank you, Juliet. Very, very interesting points, and good to see also the overlaps already with some of the skills of the future that you highlighted and that we already saw from our UNICEF colleagues before. We do have another Mentimeter question. Let's try it and see if we got it right this time. I think we set up the questions with the wrong setting, probably. How can business contribute to reducing the skills mismatch? That is, in general, what do you think business could or should be doing? And if you do work in a company and your company is addressing the skills mismatch, what is it that you are doing? Again, go to menti.com and use the code 3102755. And just let me quickly know if it is working this time, actually. Or if we made the mistake again. Nope. Perfect. So here, internal company university, I assume is basically something that a company is doing. How I hire new graduates and give opportunity to them. More internships, apprenticeships, more involvement in developing curricula with education institutions. Be involved in academia and curriculum shaping. So I'm sure we will hear some of that from, or something about that from Clems and Ricardo later. I see here again, creating the opportunities in terms of internships, opportunities, apprenticeships, collaboration with the private, public and education sector, investing early in the education life cycle and not only at the workforce. Very good, interesting point here as well. Mentorships, apprenticeships, new models of training for lower skilled youth. So here we see definitely some of the strategies that we have been observing among our members in the last in the interactions that we have with them, with definitely also some good suggestions, some good ideas of what else to look at. And here for Clems and Ricardo, I think also some things to that will relate to what they will share with us. The participants, feel free to continue posting. We will then share, when we share the presentation and the recording of the webinar, we will also share basically a summary of the inputs that have come in. We also will use these for our work going forward. So please feel free to continue sharing your comments. I'm just going to switch back to the presentation for the sake of time, so that we can hand over to, or actually have a short discussion with Clems and with Ricardo. I hope you're here and we can hear you still. I have a few questions for you, and the participants can see them on the screen, but Clems, maybe we'd start with you. You work actually for an organization that has education at its core. Can you just tell us a bit more about iPeople and how you are addressing the skills mismatch? What is the role you're playing, and what's also maybe the interest of companies in addressing the skills match from your work?
Thank you, David. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for inviting the Ayala Group to be present in this highly timely, highly helpful engagement that talks about scaling up for students and graduates. With regard to your question, David, so to quickly introduce myself, I am a workforce development champion. I am the employment bridging head from the National Teachers College, particularly involved in the Center for Education Innovation. I am also the group champion under the critical strategic imperative on employability of iPeople. iPeople and Ayala Education merged in 2018. So under our company, we now have 7 schools, namely Apex Schools, the National Teachers College, the University of Nueva Cáceres, the Mapua schools, starting with Mapua University, Malayan Colleges Laguna, and Malayan Colleges in Mindanao. With regard to the first question, David, how does our organization address the skills mismatch? Well, 2 things. Number one, on the front end, we have a clear-cut focus when it comes to developing skills aligned to the industry. That means we are highly focused when it comes to outcomes-based education or experiences. On the back end, we do 4 things. Number one, we conduct labor market research proactively. Number 2, we develop strategic employer partnerships with our friends in the industry and non-friends. The goal is really to understand the demands in the job market, what the skills are being required, where they are, and why even our graduates and even our non-graduates are not hitting the requirements of the industry or the players. Number 3 is we create specialized employability bridging programs. And the way to do that is our intimate relationship with the employer partners that we have. And by that, I mean, very specifically, we have co-design engagements with them so that everything we learn from the employers, we reverse engineer into clear-cut programs that will address their needs in the industry. So for example, they identify 1, 2, 3 skills and they're finding it hard to actually hire for such mentioned skills, the 1, 2, 3, then we go back to our curriculum and bake it there. And again, it's aligned to the outcomes-based experience that is essentially our model. The 4th thing that we do is we install what we call the graduate tracking system. The graduate tracking system that we have implemented across our schools is very rigorous. We track everything about the profile of the student before graduation and even after graduation, so that we understand the speed by which they're able to transition from the academic space to the industry, where they are employed, how much, and what job levels they are in. That's my answer to the first question, David.
Thank you, Clems. Maybe I just ask Ricardo the same thing. You work with companies a lot. What do they share with you? How do they address the skills match in Spain?
Hi, David. Thank you very much for the question and, of course, for the invitation to participate in this session. First of all, I would like to share with you that although we seem to be quite far, Spain from Asia, what I understood of all the data that came along, it's that we have a really similar situation here. We have a strong or a really sad data, more up to 40% of the Spanish youth is unemployed. So it's that means that we're in a situation that we don't have time, we don't have resources, and we have to act now, because although even with the pandemic here, it's going to be worse data, and the companies have lots of things to do, lots of things to act. What we see from companies is that here in Spain they want to act deeper and want to act faster, but probably the bureaucracy or public institutions are kind of lagging to lead the process. So we have really structured education system, things that have came in the webinar also are like, for example, the challenge between traditional and fast knowledge. I think it's really present here in Spain, and companies are trying to get closer to training education systems and training education institutions in order to help them to understand that those abilities, technical abilities, future abilities that will be necessary are really important right now. But it takes really long time then to understand and to act. Also, companies are saying or are identifying investment gaps, and they are also quite interested in opening these investment spaces. They are not probably the only ones that would need to do this investment, but it's really necessary to build alliances like with public administrations, civil society, training educations, in order to promote this type of investment necessary to get better education for the young people that at this moment are kind of lagging. It's in Spain. It's also really it's typical not to go towards to dual training education. Normally in our minds, if you go to if you have to go to the university to be successful in your life. So we have also kind of a long group of, or a big group of youth people really trained in things that probably companies don't see necessary, and they are and that's also another of the problems that companies are telling us. They need better better focused training and not a tertiary level. Probably they will need better other kinds of skills. And for Ethica Labor here, it's to open these spaces, trying to engage with public administrations, trying to let companies understand that their abilities or their actions could be much more impactful here. And we have different projects like the cluster de Impacto Social or Enterprise 2020, Jobs 2030 that are working or are really aligned to what you guys are doing in the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, trying to understand the future of work and their impacts in youth. But we also have company level projects that try to go hand with these companies and trying to understand and help them to act stronger, like upskill for future. We are trying to we're having 10 companies pilot project on how future of work is going to affect certain type of jobs, especially manual jobs or really essential jobs, but really manual. So we are trying to help those group of companies with those group of vulnerable workers to upskill their abilities and make them employable in the near future. And we also have another project that it's called Deploy Your Talents, where we bring schools to companies and companies to schools in order to help students maybe in their 12s, 13s, where they are making their important decisions in life to what to study. And what we try them is to have the experience, the real experience of what a company job is and what they need to study to get that. So we have been with some pharmaceutical companies or some IT companies that show them what they do when they have to study even math, for example, or these type of careers that are abstract in their minds, but when they get to job, it's really inspiring for them.
Thank you, Ricardo. Very, very valuable insights. And I think you mentioned something about the level of education that many many youth, many people aspire to, being university, and that not matching actually maybe the demand that companies have in terms of skills. We run over time, so I want to quickly go back to Clem's before we then close the meeting. Clems, we see very often, and someone in the Mentimeter actually pointed it out, for companies to look beyond, let's say, the direct pipeline of talent and beyond their workforce. So that's a good point to ask, what step of the education system are you focusing on, and where do you see maybe the companies, or do you see a need for companies to look beyond secondary and tertiary education and the vocational training that's kind of direct entry point usually to work? Do they have to look maybe into earlier education as well?
I see. In terms of our focus, I'd like to share, David, that all areas or levels in the education system, they're important. I mean, each one actually has its very purpose. For our group, nonetheless, to answer your question, the senior high school space and the college space remain to be very, very important. Why? In the Philippine context, there are 3 reasons I'd like to cite. Number 1, Filipino families do not have enough money to go to college and to sustain that college education. Even for public education, it can be pricey because millions of Filipinos still live within the poverty line. And then proceeding from that first problem of, not being able to go to college education and sustaining that, then you also go to the second problem, which is, okay, so now you're in college. The thing is, of the college graduates within the Philippine context, only about 10% are actually able to land a job, an entry-level professional job. The third problem that I'd like to share is that according to the study of ADB, it takes about 2 years for graduates in the Philippines to actually land their first job, about 3 years for high school, and about 1 year, generally speaking, for college graduates. Having mentioned these 3 problems, I'd like to think that we need to focus on senior high school education and college education. Senior high school education, because if ever funds will be short, at least if we build the necessary skills and capabilities while they are with us during their senior high school education, if they will go to college, they can send themselves to school because they are equipped with the labor market skills that are built to be acquired by them through the learning experiences that they are subjected to during their senior high school education. And the same goes for college. I mean, you invested, on your college education. It is important that not only you get a job, but more importantly, that you get a job immediately after graduation and that your wage is definitely even above the minimum wage. That's how I would answer that, David, that question.
Thank you, Clems. Very good points there, and astonishing to see and learn how long it actually takes for youth to get a job after they've studied. Definitely time that needs to be shortened. And I think with that, I would like to just say a few closing words. I would like to thank all the speakers today. We've run a bit over time. I would like to just let the audience know that we will take the inputs that we received from you through the Mentimeter, anything that came through the chat, to also inform basically the work that we are doing as WBCSD in the space, in the future work, and specifically in skills. We are convening actually our members of this group next week to discuss what we hear, or what we heard now, what we hear this afternoon, in the second webinar, the repetition of the webinar, to see how we can, as companies, maybe come together with partners like UNICEF and bring our needs, our wishes, our thoughts to the other stakeholders, and develop solutions together to address the skills mismatches across the world, and of course, because we work with and for our members, to the topics and countries that relate to the members of the group. But that's basically what we're working on in the next few weeks and months with our members. For you as audience, please watch your inbox for the slides and the recording, the key takeaways of the session. If you want to know more about the Future of Work project, visit futureofwork.wbcsd.org. We will also then be posting whatever we work on this page. You'll find news and insights, you'll find tools and resources on this topic. And for the companies that joined us today, for business representatives, please reach out to us if you are interested in learning more and maybe in participating in this group and shaping really the development of skills for the future and helping address the skills mismatch and really create a better future of work. With that, apologies for running over time, 10 minutes. Thank you to all the participants for joining us, for your interest in the discussion. Thank you to all the speakers for sharing their insights and your really valuable experiences with us and your recommendations. Thank you all, and please stay safe and hope to see you again on our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everyone.